So, today, family man, serial networker, cyclist, golfer, someone who I always feel has got a massive smile on your face, and most importantly, qualified architect.
Pretty good summary.
That's pretty good. We got Ali Powe from Co-Create Architects.
We're doing some really interesting projects at the moment, kind of multiple houses or one-off houses. Healthcare work, private healthcare, and then heritage as well.
What do architects do?
That's a good question. There's this common misconception that architects are loaded. You've got to be in love with the profession. You've got to love it. Yeah, and probably a small coffee addiction or something like that would be useful.
Was there ever a point where you thought maybe this isn't for you?
So I think for me,
How was the transition to being a business owner?
don't get me wrong, it was a huge transition to go from that.
What were the biggest challenges?
Am I being told the right thing? Am I getting the right advice?
What is it that motivates you?
It was all about the finished thing. Nowadays, you've got to enjoy that process.
How do you define success? What does success look like to you?
Put simply,
Bit of a soft clap to start with.
misfire.
Right, let's get started, shall we? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Konker podcast with myself, Jevon Ali Jones, and my glamorous co-host,
Maddi Cabman.
What are we all here for, guys? Usual stuff. We are sharing different routes into different individuals conquering their journey, and we're also massively into defining success.
Yeah, exactly. So our aim is to create a community where we can share advice, lessons learned, and really, share those success stories from a wide range of businesses. Everybody's story is different, and also everybody's journey to success is equally as unique. So we want our conversations to hopefully inspire and help people progress and relate to the challenges along the way.
Fantastic. So today I've put a little intro together, usual stuff. I really hope I've got everything right on here, and I am going to ask for some contributions towards the end. Family man.
Yep.
Someone who I always feel has got a massive smile on your face.
Thank you very much.
Serial networker. Cyclist. Big golfer.
Yep.
And most importantly, qualified architect.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a pretty good summary.
That's pretty good. We've got Ali Powe on the show today from Co-Create Architects.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ali,
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. Ali, qualified architect.
Yeah.
You are the danger of introducing you and then asking you to introduce yourself.
That's fine. You've taken all the good bits.
But Ali Powe, you are 1/3 founder of Co-Create Architects.
That's it. Yeah.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about yourself to start off with and sort of what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as you say, 1/3 part of Co-Create Architects. We set it up 3 years ago, something like that. Maybe a bit more than that now, 3.5, something like that. And it came out of kind of an ambition from all three of us to do something that was a bit more than what we were currently doing at the time. And we saw this niche, this gap in the market, and we just wanted to kind of grab it and go really. So
Fantastic.
Started off in the pub, as kind of most good ideas do. And we just started to kind of brainstorm kind of what could work, why we're doing it, what we're doing it for. And things started to grow. And then, we decided to give it a go. So that's what we did. So.
Let's one question last time that we didn't ask soon enough.
Yeah.
What do architects do?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
So I think the role of an architect, particularly in kind of any project, is unlike all the skilled trades, plumber, electrician, even things like structural engineers, things like that. They're very good at their subject. An architect is meant to know a little bit about kind of everything. They're meant to be experts on planning policy, and then the next minute they're meant to be an expert on sealant, or they're meant to be an expert on all different things. So I think that's the real goal. It's kind of convincing everyone to some extent you are a bit of an expert on everything, but also kind of setting expectations. So we're a coordinator. We're from day one with the clients all the way through to kind of handover and completion. So it's a demanding role, but it's a very kind of rewarding role.
So as an architect then, if somebody came to me and said, I need an architect, what would you do? What's the sort of process from start to completion, just to break it down for everybody so they really understand what you guys actually do?
Of course, yeah. So we work to what's called the RIBA stage scale or plan of works, it's called. So it's a 7-stage or 8-stage step, going from 0 all the way through. And that kind of defines each individual stage of the construction process. So 0 is very much about kind of defining the project. So initial consultations, chats, things like that. And then as you kind of move through the stages, you kind of, so for example, stage 2, by the time you get to stage 2, you're talking about conceptual design. So we're talking about kind of early development options, that kind of thing. As you move to stage 3, we're looking at planning. So securing any permissions that are required. Stage 4 is technical design, and then 5 is on site. So we work along this kind of this system. Everything we do kind of falls back to that plan of works.
So when somebody's decided that they want to begin a project, their first step kind of is coming to you guys, an architect. Is that right?
Correct. So depending on kind of which sector we're talking about, because obviously we work across kind of lots of different sectors, but assuming we're talking about kind of the residential sector, we're talking about kind of people making alterations to their home or building new houses, that kind of thing. They're quickly trying to find, most of our clients are quickly trying to find someone who knows what they're talking about. And a lot of clients would go straight to a builder and say, I want to build this, so therefore I need a builder. And then the builders turn around and say, well, actually, you need someone before me to kind of define actually what you want. So that's when we get involved. So a lot of our clients come through kind of contacts with contractors we work with, where those relationships are built, and actually there's recognition for some design input, and that's when we kind of come into play.
Okay. And who would want to use an architect? You know, I know probably quite an open question, isn't it? But what are the two sort of spectrums for that?
It is. So when you say use an architect, are you referring to, do you mean over a designer or over someone else, or do you mean an architect?
I think I'll probably mean, just in general, who are your clients?
Yeah. Okay. So looking kind of at what we do in terms of our sector work. So healthcare is something that we do a lot of, and it's a kind of growing sector for us. Mm-hmm. So there's a constant demand for those clients. Typically the clients we work with in the kind of the healthcare industry, they're well versed on the construction process. They're professionals that are educated, that are being paid to kind of work alongside you. They're part of capital development teams and everything. Whereas in the residential sector, you're dealing with people that may not have done any construction before. So these are people that don't really have any idea what they're asking of you and why they're asking. So this conversation where you say, why do you need an architect, is probably one we have daily with clients, and explain to them why they need us and where the value comes. I think there's more onus on bringing in architects or qualified professionals for design projects of all scales, particularly in the last kind of 6 months, because things have kind of changed quite dramatically with the Building Safety Act and the legislation that's kind of brought in. So that's had quite a big implication on the industry.
As simply as possible, if I didn't know anything about the construction industry, and I was, I don't know, quite a young person, and I wanted to be an architect, but I didn't know what it did. In one line,
oh my goodness,
what does an architect do?
In one line.
In one line.
In one line. I think it's a difficult question. It's very difficult because you're trying to encapsulate everything that is architecture. Put simply, I'll answer the question in a minute, but kind of working around the question, I think, put simply, if everyone was disclosed to what it took to be an architect and what it took to kind of manage projects in the way that we do, I think it would put a lot of people off initially. Right. It's something that you really have to fall in love with and love doing, because it's incredibly demanding, but at the same time, it's incredibly rewarding. And there's plenty of jobs out there you can go and do and earn lots of money. And there's plenty of, and an architecture in our kind of in the southwest is not the area to be doing that. Right. So there's plenty of places you go down. So if you're in the architectural world, it's because you want to be there and you want to make change. You've got to be fueled by that. That's my view. At least others may feel differently, but that's at least my view. So one line to kind of encapsulate. I think you've got to kind of be a coordinator. You've really got to understand. You've got to be a people person. You've got to be a coordinator. You've got to be able to manage people's expectations, deliver on time, coordinate. I don't know how that turns into a single line, but but yeah, no, it's a difficult question.
If somebody asked me what an architect does, and I don't really know, but I would just say designs buildings.
Yeah.
But I know I'm probably not doing it justice by saying just that.
Yeah.
So design, I think from the outset that is what we do, and that is what most people would say. That's what an architect does. From behind the scenes, and particularly in my role that I mean, obviously being an architect means a million different things to a million different people because there's so many different sectors and everything. But for me, actually, the design element of it is not the biggest part. And that seems a bit odd to say, but actually in the early stages, we talked about the RBA plan of works earlier.
Yeah.
So the early stages is very creative and it's very kind of fast-paced sketches, things like that. Whereas as you kind of get later down the line, the design becomes more refined, it becomes more fixed, it becomes harder to change. More people get involved, consultants, contractors, builders, they're all different people from different backgrounds. So trying to sit right in the middle of all that, adjacent to your client, who's the one that's employed you, paying you to do your role, and you're the one that you've got the best relationship with the client. So trying to manage those expectations throughout the whole process is a difficult thing. And like I say, as it becomes more and more fixed, it becomes less about design and more about management of information, coordination,
problem solving
to some extent, but problem solving not just in the design sense, but also in how we're going to get over this problem in terms of contractually and all sorts. So there's a huge amount that goes into it.
What sort of percentage is it then of like design?
Well, like I said,
stuff? It's difficult to say.
The early stages is very design heavy. So that's where it's kind of ideas are free. You can make scribbles on paper and think, that doesn't work, throw it out, kind of thing. But as I said, as things evolve, as you start to kind of introduce things like planning permission, where you kind of have kind of gateways where designs become fixed to some extent, it becomes difficult to backtrack and to change. More people are getting involved at that stage. So I would say early stages is very, very creative, very, very design driven, and then as things kind of move forward to the kind of construction side, they become more about coordination. So,
and what kind of stage do you enjoy the most, and why?
So I think part of what we do as a company, it was about developing something that was different, that was unique, that was exciting, that was varied. Varied is probably the best word to describe what we do. It's different sectors, different people, and so I think the joy of Co-Create, I think a lot of other people would agree, is the variation in the work we do. So if we're all stuck doing the same thing so for example, if you had a £15 million project, let's say, there's you've got a lot of work to do in one particular area. So you can spend 3, 4, 5 weeks doing the same thing. Whereas at Co-Create, that's not what we do. We do smaller projects, more manageable. So 1 minute you're doing something that's very kind of heritage, listed building, maybe something like that. Whereas later down the line, you might be doing something that's very creative. So it's that variation week on week that I enjoyed the most. So there isn't one thing that I enjoy more than anything, but it's the variation that I kind of truly like. It's nice to kind of offset the stress of a project on site with doing something very highly creative and in its early stages. So that's the
good
nice
mixture
part
of that, isn't there?
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. So,
okay, great. So we know what an architect does now.
Perfect, I think.
Let's throw it right back to, where did it all start for you, potentially wanting to become an architect? Was it something you stumbled upon, or was there something really young which sort of sparked it and then set you on that journey? How did it all start?
So I think I was probably one of those fortunate people, or fortunate kids, young adults, that kind of knew what they wanted to do. But in all I know, and I know a lot of people struggle, and friends of mine that kind of haven't known, even kind of siblings that haven't kind of entirely known what they want to do. Whereas I think at an early age, and when I say early, I mean kind of 17, something like that, I was introduced to this idea of architecture. I mean, it's not a taught subject. You can't go and you don't teach architecture at GCSE or even A level.
Should it be?
Maybe that's a conversation.
It's another subject we can get
into,
isn't it?
But it was introduced to me through art. So art was what I loved. Art was the thing I wanted to do. I really enjoyed it. I love the creative side. I love that side of it. But I also like kind of IT, technology, that kind of thing. So they're kind of actual art, but with kind of a bit more thought process behind it. It's kind of science. I mean, I was never really that very good at kind of the technology side, but I like the creative side of that. So for me, it came across because I did a trip to Barcelona as part of art in A level, and I was kind of introduced through architecture through that way, thinking, well, wait a minute, this is a thing. This is the thing people do. Like up until that point, I had kind of no conception that architecture was the thing that people design buildings. I mean, I don't know, that seems a bit strange to say, but it just wasn't.
No, I know what you mean.
It's not in you just don't think about it because you're not taught it, or So, and as soon as I realized that was a thing, that was like, right, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So,
and where did the whole art sort of passion come from? Because if you say you went and did your A level art, did art start even before that? Were you always quite a creative person?
I think I've always been pretty creative. I've always, but I've always, it's been creative, but I've always liked that kind of, I was the kid that kind of built the tree houses, and we did like an extracurricular project when I was about 16, and I was like, I'm going to build a half pipe. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, nice.
So I built a half pipe, but I completely miscalculated all the I was more excited about building the thing than actually kind of putting too much thought into how I was going to build it. So I just kind of went with it. Dad reluctantly kind of helped out. Anyway, I went to have a go on it for the first time, broke my leg, broke my arm.
No way.
First time.
First time.
A&E, yeah.
Was that a design fault?
Or massive...
Was that user error?
No, it was a huge design fault. Yeah, really? No, massive design fault.
What happened then?
It was it was far too steep for something that was far too small to start with. It was completely the wrong wood timber to be using. MDF is not a good system. Anyway, it was reinforced afterwards with some plywood, which did the trick. But I don't know. I've always been that. I've always liked that kind of that side of it. That creative side, but I like the hands-on side as well. I'm a kind of avid DIYer and things like that. I like to not just be the one that kind of goes to site and says this is how you should do it, but not actually ever doing that before. So I quite like that side.
So to add to that intro that I put on there, artist and skater.
Yeah.
No longer, unfortunately.
No longer.
And I was never very good at skateboarding. I like the idea of it more than I was actually any good at it.
Yeah, I think I'm the same actually.
I had a friend who was brilliant at skateboarding, and he used to drive me mad, but I was never very good.
No. Okay. So I suppose you're always quite a creative kind of person.
Yeah.
Sort of stumbled upon art, and then sort of stumbled upon, I suppose, a passion for buildings through a trip to Barcelona.
Which the architecture there is beautiful, so no wonder you were inspired.
Got any favourite buildings over there?
Well, I don't know. On the spot well, there's hundreds there. I don't know. I think the amazing thing about Barcelona, I mean, it's such. I've been twice, and once as a kind of through art, which was one experience, and then later with family, and it's favorite build. I mean, like I said, there's hundreds to choose from, but I mean, they've got like the Ramblas is a lovely place to be, kind of street performance and things like that, and that's the thing with Barcelona. It's not just about the buildings; it's the culture. It's even things like the pickpocketing. There's a quite an artistic side to kind of that underlying side of Barcelona, which is a really interesting kind of thought. So,
I suppose it's with architecture as well. I don't know if I'm going off here and making this up, but it's how the buildings actually affect the culture and the people and how they're all used as well. Is that a big part of architecture as well?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what buildings do. I mean, it's the arrangement of spaces and the space that you're in has a huge impact. I mean, like I say, even things like paint colours and everything has a huge impact on moods. Yeah. So, well,
again, that just goes to show how much actually goes into these sort of things rather than just designing something and then sort of planning it. That's great. Okay, so we got to A-level GCSEs and A-levels for art, and then I'm guessing you went to university. Is that how it went?
So I stayed pretty local. Been to uni Plymouth, so did my bachelor's there, which was brilliant. First insight to kind of what architecture was that I'd kind of signed up to, not knowing anything about it. And as I said, you're not taught it, so you just rock up one day and think, right, what's architecture school about? And it's an interesting experience. I mean, it's probably changed quite a lot since I was last there. I was 144 people in our year when we first joined. And
is that a lot?
I don't know. I mean, it felt like a lot. It felt like a big class. I mean, I went from A-level, so I was doing kind of 30 people in my class to something that was 144 in the same room. It dropped to about 120 within the first week. That kind of just goes to show, actually. And the thing is, it's architecture encapsulates so much, and what I feel they try and teach you at university is nothing to do with actually the profession. It's to do with your creative mind and how you think about, like we talked about spaces and feelings and emotions, and it's particularly at Plymouth, being a Bachelor of Arts.
Is that a good thing?
I think so. I think it's most people would say that if you went to a practice, you'd learn far more at practice about actually how to deliver projects, and you would deliver more about the kind of technical side. You'd understand far more about that. But university, it kind of pulls you away and detaches you from the actual profession of architecture, and starts to let you build that creative mind. Yeah. So,
do you think that's kind of where your love grew for architecture? Would you say?
Potentially, yeah. I think
Because you were really able to explore it and like the depths of it.
I think the thing is, this is never a right or wrong answer, and I think I found that a little bit frustrating sometimes because I'm quite a practical kind of person. It either works or it doesn't work. I quite like that. Whereas in architecture, you don't have that. Yes, from one person's perspective, something might work, whereas someone else's it doesn't. And whereas one person might like a building or a design, someone else might not.
Yeah.
So, and I find that really annoying.
Yeah.
Because I like progression. I like to see things evolve, and so I think I tried to kind of shortcut my way to some extent, because that's how my mind kind of gears up. It's like, how can I get from A to B? And then it kind of took me about 3 years to realize that it wasn't about getting to B. It was about the process, about how I got to B. Okay. And that kind of came to light. As you're there at architecture school, I guess. So,
so you went to university, and I mean, I know the title architect is a protected title, isn't it? What is the route to becoming an architect then? Is university? Well, do you want to talk about your route first of all, and then we can maybe talk about the other routes?
I don't think I'm probably the best person to talk about all the different routes, but I know there are, and things are ever changing. But as you said, the title architect is a protected title, so it's not. So you can't call yourself an architect unless you've gone through the process and you're an architect. There are some slight caveats to that, i.e. if you're like a landscape architect, and I think you're allowed to use terms like that as long as it's separate to, but yeah, principally you can't go around doing architectural work and call yourself an architect. So the process is or the process that I took, for example, is probably the most traditional route. So you do a bachelor's, which is a 3-year course. You then take a year out or 2 years out, or however long you feel. I think 12 months is the requirement, or it was at least when I did it. That would then entitle you to then enroll on your master's degree. What's
that year out? What do you do in that year?
So it's a placement year. So you do a placement year with a practice. You work for 12 months, gain some kind of experience. Obviously, at that point in time, you think you kind of everything because you've come out of university. And you think, I've done 3 years at uni. I've got my creative mind that they've taught me, and then you sit in front of a computer and you know nothing, and it dawns on you that everything they've taught you for the last 3 years has got nothing to do with the day to day. So you get kind of thrown in the deep end.
What sort of things would somebody at that kind of level be doing then every day? Is there something which is it just the experience which you have to get before you go on, or is it certain things which you have to tick off, or are there certain responsibilities that you have to do?
So the year is about gaining some industry experience. So I think for the purposes of the educational side, I think it's about it's almost like a little checkpoint really for the university and for yourself to make sure that actually this thing you've already committed 3 years to doing, you've actually got no industry experience. So why not go out, do 12 months, see if actually you like doing this job, you understand what it's about, you see it in the real world. Because if you then went straight in to do your master's degree, you're going to do basically 5 years straight of university and never have set foot in an architectural practice to come out committing all that time to it. So I think it's really good for people to kind of go out and gain some experience. I think being, I guess, brutally honest, I think the first 12 months, it's a difficult thing to go through. And depending on what kind of practice you're at, will determine kind of what roles they're going to give you. So here, for example, because we're a relatively small company with a diverse range, I think there's quite a lot of exposure. So you're probably going to get experience across all of those different stages we talked about earlier. You're going to see insights to everything. Whereas I think as the practices get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the projects get bigger and the programs get longer, you're going to be more focused in particular areas. So I think it's probably quite typical for part one, which is what we call kind of someone coming out of their first or coming out of their bachelor's into their placement year. It would be quite typical for them to do the middle stage work, so the kind of stage 2, stage 3 work. You might start to do some of the technical side, which is the stage 4, but typically it's more the conceptual stuff that you'd be doing. And if you're working for a really big practice, you might be kind of forced to kind of clean the cupboards and make tea and things like that. But it's the exposure.
Life.
Exactly. So, but it's but yeah, it just depends on the practice you're at, really. So,
what would you say is the biggest lesson you learned in your placement year?
So I went to a company in Torquay, and for a company in Torquay, they actually worked on some incredibly big projects internationally. So
really,
huge projects. And for me, that was my first insight to what architecture was. And the thing that company I personally felt did very, very well was it had everything in place. There was a right and a wrong way to do everything, protocol. So I think my first step into the architectural world was a very confident one, because it felt like or the lessons I learned from that company felt like they were the right lessons. I wasn't being taught bad habits, I guess is what I'm saying. So like I say, being a big company working internationally, they couldn't really afford to not have everything in order. So so that was, I think that's probably the biggest thing I've taken away from working there, is actually I understood how things should be done and how things should be done right. And if it was done wrong,
the effects of that,
the effects of that, exactly. So
that's good.
So that was my experience. But again, because it was a slightly larger company, bigger projects, the work I was doing was isolated to those kind of middle stages. But that's just naturally where a part one would typically fall into, because it's their first exposure. So,
okay. So then you do that 12 months experience, you come out of university, and then I think you mentioned you have to go back to university.
Yeah. So you do a master's. So like I said, we talked about lots of different routes, but again, I probably did the most traditional route you can possibly do. So so I did my placement, went back and did my master's degree. That's a 2-year degree. I decided to go back to Plymouth. Which was good. I enjoyed it. It's very, very different when you go back to do your master's. Really? It's a completely different experience. And I think you go from being kind of looking up to your tutors and lecturers and things like that.
Yeah.
And when you go back in your master's, you get a very different vibe from, you're almost like colleagues, which is a really lovely thing, because you get a different space. You have a different studio, which is smaller, going from 144 people in my first year, probably down to something like 40 in what will be my fourth year at uni. Okay. So you feel slightly kind of elevated, empowered, a bit more respect. Everyone's got a bit of industry experience, so you're sharing tales of what you've been doing in the last year and everything. But also, some people have done 5 years at place, like 5 years out of industry, 10 years out of industry. So you get a much more varied mix during your masters.
That is interesting, isn't it? Because you get all sorts of people go back to do a masters and then actually sort of start on their journey with the masters. Then I know you mentioned the sort of bachelor's or the part one was quite a lot around the skills to potentially become an architect. Is the part two or the masters more so around a little bit more specific to actually working as an architect?
You'd think.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, there is. So,
because that would make sense, wouldn't it?
But being brutally honest, again, like I said before, I think if they generally taught you what you actually had to do on a day-to-day basis, if they taught you how to submit a planning application, how to do a set of building regulations drawing, let's say, I think you would. I don't think it would keep a lot of people entertained.
Really?
I think it's a room filled with creative minds that are kind of borderline art, borderline architecture. So, and the course kind of mirrors that. It straddles that kind of boundary between art and architecture. So the course that I did while I was doing my master's was all about master planning. So it was all about looking at kind of big areas of land and cities, and looking at how they can be reordered, reformatted, looking at the social side and everything to kind of empower them and kind of change them for the better. And but not just looking at the built form, but looking at all the other kind of financial aspects and gentrification elements and things like that. And so it became a very different thing. In my experience, the 2 years were quite similar. However, my first year of masters was based in London, the London-based scheme, whereas or Tottenham, and then second year was in Poland. So that added quite a nice dynamic, going from somewhere like London, which was full of money, somewhere like London, which was very kind of vast and open, and there wasn't a lot of money. So you really had to it put pressure on your way of thinking, because you couldn't just think, we'll just put a massive building that was cost billions of pounds. You can't do that. So you have to think outside the box and think about how you kind of get the most out of the city. So it was a master planning degree. That's what it was based around. So, but alongside that, you also do written history and things like that, but also the technical side. So there's probably a bit more onus on technology and the technical side of being an architect, basically. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So you finish the masters, then what happens?
Finish the masters, and then I had to get a job.
The big wide world.
The big wide world.
Were you going to miss Plymouth Uni? How was your time there?
I was done.
You were done.
I'd been there for 5 years.
Yeah. Did you live in Plymouth at the time?
No, I didn't actually. I was commuting. So I lived in Plymouth early on, bachelor's. Then I ended up moving back.
Yeah.
to kind of Torquay, Paynton area, and then ended up commuting up. So I was starting to kind of wanting to move on. And I think particularly because the first year and the second year of our masters largely followed a similar format. It almost felt like we were kind of redoing some of the work we'd done in the previous year. So I was really kind of getting quite excited about what this world of architecture is. I started to put my feelers out earlier for jobs. I started to work a part-time job alongside doing the end of my second year, and then that led into a full-time role in Exeter.
That's great.
Yeah.
So then you went into that full-time role, and is there anything that you have to do after that? I suppose we're kind of working towards calling yourself an
architect.
Correct,
yeah. So we've gone through a step. So step 1 BA, step 2 is the placement, step 3 being your masters, and then the final step. So we call that our part 3. So that you get a lot of people that will get to part 1, decide that it's either not for them, or they'll take a slightly different path. So by the time you've got to part 2, again, some people decide not to proceed any further, and they're happy being a part 2. Obviously, to get yourself to become a registered architect, you've got to go through that part 3 process. So there's lots of different universities that offer that as a course. Typically, it's done alongside working your full-time job. So you're meant to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then alongside that.
And do that.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's brutal, isn't it? I mean, how many years of university have you got there then? Is it 5, 6?
5 years. So 5 years full-time.
Yeah.
And then you do your, effectively, what is your 6th year, 7th, including your placement year, to become qualified. So it's
that's an awful lot of work. It
is.
Yeah.
It is. And then what I said earlier about you've got to love it. You've got to love it.
Yeah.
You've really, really got to love it. I mean, you can become a doctor in 5 years. And,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be the longest degree going. So, but if you don't really love doing it and you don't really have a passion for it, it's a difficult thing to keep momentum up for.
Yeah. Because I think the stereotype as well, sorry to butt in there, is, architects work really hard and work really long hours and, are good at what they do. And do an awful lot to get there as well.
Well, I think by the time you've done 7 years, I think you're used to working hard.
You're used to working hard.
And it's amazing how many hours are in the day when you start doing your part 3. And that is a big challenge because, so I did mine at UWE. So I did Plymouth, and then I did UWE for my part 3. I really like that course. And to be honest, I think I learned more about what I wanted to learn about at UWE in that 1 year that maybe I did in the 5 years at. I think there's a lot I learned at Plymouth that I don't realise I've learned, but actually practical things about architecture. I mean, typically the kind of the slang for kind of what a part 3 is, it's basically how not to get sued. That's what they say. So you've done 6 years developing this amazing creative mind, and now you've got to go out into the real world and deal with contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand what you're doing. So it's really about how the contractual side of it. Disputes, things like that, how you get over that. Obviously things like that happen in the industry because people, money, it's of course it's going to happen. So
it's a lot more real world sort of
it's very real world. Yeah, absolutely. Case studies, examples, even a bit of role play.
Really?
Yeah, it's good. And it really does help actually. And I really enjoyed my part 3 course. I felt like I got a lot out of it, but you've got to be really meticulous with the way you operate and do that course because it's incredibly demanding. UWE's broken into 2 distinct kind of sections. You do what are called the modules. So they're over the course of about 3 or 4 months. And then alongside that, or separate to that, you do a case study, a career evaluation where you've got to talk about why you think you should become an architect. And those are separate pieces of work that you have to do alongside that. So only once you've completed the modules, which is a course, so you've got to kind of keep up with the course. You can't, it's not like coursework, there's a deadline. So that's quite a grueling 3 or 4, if not maybe even 5 months worth of work to go through over constant visits kind of back to UWE.
And it's all outside of hours.
All outside of hours, yeah.
So you're doing 2, 3, 4 hours a night trying to tick off this part 3 then as well.
And then not only doing the part 3, you've got to do a case study, a case study is centered around a project. So it demands you to be actively, heavily involved in a project, if not running it. Okay. So alongside doing your modules, you'll have to manage a big project, which alongside all of that, you've then got to write a case study about all of that. So it's good, but when your head's in it, it becomes easier because you're just writing about the thing you're doing on a daily basis. So as long as you're doing it, it kind of makes some sense. But So, but I think I did it as quick as I could possibly do it. I started in the January and I qualified in the September. So I did it all. Whereas some people would do the modules and then they would take a year or 2 or 3 to do the case study. That's the bit that's undefined. But I just thought,
let's go.
Head down, get it done.
Yeah.
And then once all that's done, so you submitted all that, that's all signed off. Then you got to do an interview. So the interview is the interview is the final piece of the puzzle. Everything, all your education and everything comes down to that. Sitting in a room for 1 hour with some industry professionals, and at the end of it, they're going to decide whether you're ready or not.
And is that a pass or fail thing?
Pass, fail.
Can you go through all of that and
pass, fail.
And they turn around and say?
Yep. So the feedback can be either. There's lots of different feedback, and obviously I went through first time, which was great, but there's friends of mine that didn't, and it's difficult. Yeah, the feedback is. Sorry, lost my train of thought. The feedback is can be anything from things like maturity. So they might just feel that actually, well, maybe you've got the experience, maybe you haven't come across in the right way. So, or it could be. So it's
like personality as well.
It's basically, I think the term that they use is a safe pair of hands. So what they're basically saying is, if we entrust you with this thing, which is this architectural role,
it's a lot of responsibility.
Can you look after that? Can you make sure that you're not going to do something which would mean that you lost that title? So they're trying to protect the industry, protect you. So that's what it's all about. And as I said, that can come across in quality of work, that can come across in experience, it can be anything. So
thorough,
very thorough. Yeah.
Time. What are the sort of, that's a big old lengthy process, isn't it? What are the sort of top 3 skills or attributes you feel like you would need to become an architect?
I think you've got to be in love with the profession. You've got to love it. If you don't love buildings, then you're going to struggle to do this, because that's got to be the main thing. I think resilience. You are, from day one, you've got to stand up in front of people, present your ideas, and be told they're rubbish, put simply. And that's consistent throughout your whole career, but you're taught that from day one or week one in your first. Well, I was, at least. And it's difficult. So you've got to be resilient, and you've got to recognize that when you think something's right, maybe something isn't right. Or maybe it's not right in someone else's eyes, and you've got to understand that. So I think that's a big part. So you've got to be in love with it. You've got to be resilient. And probably a small coffee addiction or something like that would be useful.
Get you through it.
Just to kind of keep the hours up. And I think just make sure that the driving factor behind why you're doing this is positive, and it's because there's this common misconception that architects are loaded, but they're not. They're sleep deprived and passionate. That's what we are. So
I'm just curious over this grueling process to become an architect.
I bet it sounds really, really kind of painful and long. And
was there ever a point where you thought, maybe this isn't for you?
So I think for me, I went straight out of school. I didn't have a gap year or anything. I went straight to uni. So I'd always been in full-time education, did all of that, did my placement, but even my placement wasn't really a job. I mean, I did get paid for it, but kind of peppercorn payments, just to kind of make sure I can live. But the intention was always to go back to uni. So I never allowed myself to kind of step over the line, and where you end up kind of getting a mortgage and starting to kind of enjoy having some money and having a job and things like that. So it was always about education for me. It was only really once I finished my part 2 that it became that I got a job and thought, oh my goodness, I can actually earn a little bit of money. And but then you don't have to go back to uni then. Your part 3 you just do alongside that. And then the incentive is that hopefully if you've done your part 3, you then become qualified, and hopefully there's incentives in terms of pay rises and things like that after that process. So that's the incentive. So, but I think, or some people, should I say, come to architecture later in their lives, or have a year out, or do a gap year. They get used to a different lifestyle, realize there's a life outside education, and then it becomes quite a difficult thing to kind of commit to, because they're doing it because they want to do something different. So for me, it was just nice and simple. But would I struggle to go back to uni now? Absolutely. I would really struggle to go through that again, just because of where I am now and what I've done. And
So if there's somebody listening to this who wants to become an architect, what's your best advice for them? Obviously listen to this podcast, because you've given a great sort of understanding of the traditional route.
Yeah.
What's your best advice for sort of going through that route?
I think just, if you're going to do it, stay focused. Don't don't do it on the side of anything else. If you want to do it properly. Know the goal, know why you're doing it, do it for the right reasons, and just stay on that course, and don't get kind of strayed, or don't stray from the path because there's some temptation for something else that gives you a kind of short-term win, or stay on the path. Just keep doing it. If you're better off working for low money in an architectural practice making tea than you are working at the cinema or something. Do you know what I mean? Like you're better off being in the profession, being around the profession, devoting it to it. And if you can afford to do it, do it. Is, I guess, my kind of,
the end goal's kind of
the
worth
end goal.
it.
The end. Well, it is. No, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
definitely.
It is, because it does unlock. Because as you said, the title's protected, so it's not like you go through this enormous process and there's nothing at the end. At the end of the day, I can call myself an architect, and someone else can't. And while they can do a similar role to me, they can't be a registered practice. They aren't kind of. They don't have the reassurance from the RIBA, the ARB, and things like that. So it's that you can. There's value in it, and definitely worth pursuing. So, and as you said, there's different routes. To do the profession as well. I mean, obviously, I've done a very traditional route, but there's lots of other ways. People have different placement years. Some people do their part ones, even their part twos, alongside their main roles. It adds time to it because you're doing it part time, not full time. But I've had friends that have done that way as well, and that works. There's apprentice routes and all sorts coming in. So they're just trying to make it a bit more accessible.
That's good. Yeah. Let's kick it on a little bit then.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we've sort of mentioned you're sort of 1/3 of Co-Create, aren't you? Sort of one of the directors out of 3 here. You've been going for the last sort of 3 years. Let's talk about how that came about, and maybe talk about your partners. How did sort of Co-Create start?
How it was born.
Where did that come? Where did the idea come from?
I'm interested about the pub story here.
Yeah, so the
the
pub story.
Love
all good ideas start in the pub. So just to make things really common, there's 2 other Jamies and there's me.
Right.
So 2 Jamies and an Ali. So I'll call them JA and JD just to keep things simple. So JD, I went to uni with in my master's. So because of the nature of the course, he had two-year placement years. I had 1 placement year. So we were kind of a year apart during our bachelor's, or maybe 2 years. And then we kind of ended up being on the same course for our master's. And we finished our master's degree. And we both went to kind of rival firms. So we didn't see each other post university, but then as a uni group, we used to meet up once a year.
Yeah.
So once a year at Christmas, we would have some pub drinks and things like that.
Cool.
Which was great. And we both went from university. We both went to different firms. So Jane went to a firm in Plymouth, and I went to a firm in Exeter. Rival firms to some extent, competing for similar work. Yeah. So typically we've gone from being kind of rivals at university to kind of rivals in the professional world. Stayed in touch. Used to meet up once a year, if not a little bit more than that, just kind of as friends really. And then we both completed became part 3 qualified. And then discussions kind of started happening in the background about kind of how we can kind of create something a bit more exciting, and what's the vision, what are our kind of ambitions as individuals. So rumours were kind of floating, or not rumours, but conversations were happening between us about kind of, well, actually, is there a scope to kind of create something new here? So we'd known JA is the other JA from previous kind of, he used to work within the industry, but he was based in Torquay. So we knew of him, and actually we were all kind of getting to be quite kind of good friends, and decided that actually this could be something that we kind of set up together and do together. So so kind of following kind of COVID lockdown and things like that, there was these kind of conversations happening in the background, and we decided that actually we were going to leave our full-time jobs and set up this company, and that's what we did. And we just kind of took a leap of faith and see where it ended up. But I think some of the things that we decided to do early on was we wanted a base. We wanted to feel like the transition between doing this kind of full-time role, for the jobs we were kind of doing at the time. We didn't want to kind of go from that to working from home and there not being too much structure. So we got ourselves an office. I mean, the office was about 5 square meters. Really? No joke. It was big enough.
A little box.
It was a 1-person office. So putting 2 of us in there was a challenge. Fitting 3 of us in there was
sat on each other's laps.
It just didn't work. So, but at that point in time, it was 3 of us working kind of independently, having a shared name, shared insurance, and kind of doing our own thing. And then there was this kind of growing kind of thought that, well, we should expand, and we've got lots of potential clients coming in. We'd now by this point have become a kind of registered practice. We'd had this little office that we'd set up as well, which was good fun. We thought we really need someone. We need someone else. So I was all pro. Let's bring in someone else. Let's employ someone. JD was slightly more reluctant to that. I thought, no, let's just see how it goes. And so we kind of ganged up on him a bit, and we ended up taking on a part one. So in their placement year, from Plymouth University.
Oh, that's a nice.
It was amazing. It was really good. So and overnight the dynamic of the company changed, and we quickly realised that our 2-person office was really not big enough for 4 people. I mean, we weren't all working there full time, but it quickly dawned on us that it was too big. I mean, effectively, the office was a flat roof dormer on the 3rd floor of a small office block, and that it was the size of the dormer. It was, I mean, as big as dormers are, they're not very big. So we were very quickly realising that this wasn't going to suffice. So. And then I think we employed someone else before we'd actually moved. So I think we then got to 5.
Squeeze 5 in the room.
All hot desking this tiny little office space. And then realising that we need to address this. So that's when we made the move to where we are now, which is at Seal Hayne. So
nice.
So that all happened pretty quickly over the course of 6 months.
Oh, wow.
We got an office, outgrew it within the month, then had to get another office. We'd employed 2 people by this point. And I think that was the biggest change. As soon as we started to employ people, it went from being, oh, well, it's just us, just having a bit of fun, to actually, well...
Felt like a business.
Well, felt like a business. And also contracts, employment contracts, and all things that weren't a consideration at the time, but all things like that, they had to be...
It's also new.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
So we put a lot of time and a lot of energy into making sure we had the right systems in place. And that's something we've kind of tried to heavily invest in. I think because we've kind of been born out of lockdown, because we've been born out of lockdown, I guess we're quite resilient. We've built a company that's flexible. We haven't got big server systems that require us to be in the office. Like it's all built around flexibility.
That's good.
So we've tried to kind of keep that. I mean, all our staff at the moment are now on kind of flexible time contracts, which is, not all of them. Some of them are. We have the opportunity. Everyone's working kind of to the hours that they want to work. So we're trying to create something that feels a bit more kind of accessible to everybody, and just trying to move away from that kind of 9 to 5 rigid full-time contract for everyone kind of thing, and everyone being in the office. So
where did the name come from then? How did that come about?
The name. So it's the hardest part for any
it is,
company.
isn't it? And there's some funny stories come up with names as well, aren't there?
What, our name? Or
well, not your name, but just how names come about.
Oh, they do. I don't remember spending days and days trying to think about the right name. I think it was just a name that we'd kind of was written down on a bit of paper one day, and we thought, well, that could work. I mean, there's lots of other kind of co-create that exist around the world. There's actually another co-create in Exeter called Co-Create Exeter, where they do some fabulous things with some recycled products, and they make things out of, and they've got really good intentions. So it's definitely not wholly unique in terms of kind of worldwide or even locally, but it's a name that for us, we feel it kind of encompasses what we do. It's all about, I mean, the can be lots of things, but principally it's kind of collaboration. It's about working. We're people orientated. We want to keep our clients involved from day one throughout the process, and that's what it's about. It's about creating things alongside others, with others, and making sure that everyone's involved. And it's I think that's a really important part of what we do. You're not buying drawings from us. You're buying us. You're buying our time and our energy and we really try and kind of get that across to our clients. So yeah.
Brilliant. And one thing I'm kind of interested on, you touched on how the dynamic in the team obviously changed so quickly with the fast-paced movement of people joining and moving offices. How have you kind of built your culture around that? So people working flexibly and, you know, how fast-paced you've grown. How's that been? Has it been something you've really kind of tried to manage, or has it happened naturally?
So culture is a really good word for us, because that's when we were having those discussions in the pub early doors. I mean, at that point in time, we weren't really thinking about too far ahead. We were just thinking about, well, do we sell a company? But I think as things kind of quickly evolved, we all 3 of us had different experiences. most of us worked in larger companies, quite routined in the way that they operate. And I think some of them having really good systems, like I mentioned before. So we wanted to bring that structure to the company, but we also wanted to create something that we felt that didn't currently exist locally. We could offer something to people looking to kind of join a practice in the Southwest, but something that was completely different to what was currently being offered by other companies. So, like I say, flexibility is key. I mean, most people these days like the occasional working from home day, or they maybe like the Friday off or something like that. So that was something we didn't shy away from, and we were very open about from day one. Is we want people to feel that we can support them, and if that means doing it in a flexible basis, we do. And I think we've listened to all of our kind of employees as they've come in, and given them the opportunity if they want to do something on a flexible basis. So but culture is like I say, is a really good word. And I think my take on it is I'm probably slightly I like everyone kind of dressed a bit smarter, and kind of I like that kind of old school kind of office environment. Whereas I think the other two Jamies I think are far more kind of, this is 2024, people can wear what they want. It doesn't matter. So I've done my best to kind of keep up with that, but I think it's
great to have that balance between all you.
100%. We've got to
There's an element of both, I would agree. And I'm a bit more old school. I love the old school, but you've got to move with the times at the same time, don't you?
It's finding a balance, and I think it depends on what you're doing that day, who you're seeing, but I think we definitely have a relaxed vibe in the office. I think we're pretty laid back with what everybody can wear and how we operate. And
so from a, it's quite interesting because it offers a really nice insight, doesn't it, into what your business is like and what it's actually like to work for you. And again, it's a really difficult question, but like, why would somebody want to come and work for Co-Create? And I think we've probably touched upon those things just then, but is there anything else you could add to that?
It's a good question, and it's as you said, I think principally we can offer. We like to think we can offer something that feels inclusive, flexible for everybody. But I think more so as well. I think what we try and be as outward facing as possible. I think some practices are a bit more kind of wrapped up, and like I say, it's 9 to 5. They kind of just do their jobs and they go home. We don't do that. We do lots of networking. We do lots of events. We have an annual environmental day where we go out and we devote the entire office time, all members of staff, to go out and do something for the environment. We have charity days that we do. We raise money for charity. We do lots of events throughout the year. So we really try and be kind of outward facing, do things to kind of support the community, and we want everyone to get involved with that. There's a chap in the office, Aaron, who you met earlier. He's set up a company called Instinct, and he'll be able to tell you a lot more than I can about the company, but it supports artists throughout Plymouth, and he curates different events throughout Plymouth. Right. We support that. We go to his events. We sponsor it. We want him to feel empowered. So personal ambition is a big thing for us. If you've got something that you want to do, we're going to try and help support you and do that, and we do. And
sounds like you're quite, not to cut you off there, but like you very much care about your people. The inside and outside. And I know it's really easy. You know, we speak to, obviously being transparent, being a recruiter, I have been a long time. You speak to a lot of companies that say, oh yeah, our people are our most important asset, blah, blah, blah. But then they don't actually action that and do things which show that.
Yeah.
But like, the flexibility, being able to work from home. I know it's all pretty basic stuff, but just stuff like you've mentioned, supporting your staff with other things outside of work and looking after them. That goes such a long way, because it's almost, and it's pretty classic, isn't it? But you almost feel like you're part of a family more so, and you have an influence on what they're doing. And it's a feel. It's really hard to describe, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually think, echoing Jevon's point, like you've mentioned how architects are so creative. So, you wouldn't be transparent as an employer if you weren't letting your people be creative and branch out to that. So I think, it's really great.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously we're trying to run a business, but at the same time, there's lots of things we can do. I mean, as you said, we're incredibly creative in what we do. We employ creatives who naturally are people that want to do things, and that comes out in different ways. And as I said, we get the most out of everybody by making sure that they feel like their wings are full of air and they're supported, and that's what we're trying to do. And happy, and they like coming to work, and just little things. I mean, I think we probably do more pub lunches than any other company.
Well, we could probably.
It's a big part of it. But it's a huge part, because if people are happy in work, then it's going to help you grow your business a lot more, because people are going to be with you for longer. It's all about longevity, isn't it, really? And if you're serious about growing your business, you need people to be with you for a little bit longer than just a year, and then jump ship for something else. It's
an investment as well. And I think, like I say, the people coming out of uni, they love architecture, and they need to land somewhere that they enjoy working. And as you said, by the time someone comes in, I mean, because it's very creative, it's different practices work in different ways, and while some of the core skills are the same, they work in different ways. So particularly more junior staff, part ones, even part twos and things like that, they're kind of looking at you for kind of saying, well, this is how we do things here, and that might be different to the experience they've had. So it does take some time to develop their skill set to be relevant to your practice. So as you said, you can't really afford to be bringing people in for 6 months, because actually after 6 months they become very valuable. So that's why we want to make sure that they land here and they enjoy it, and they really like to work here. So
I think another question which I'll ask, and it's almost sort of flip it on its head, kind of ask what are the USPs for somebody potentially coming to want to work here, but what are the USPs for you guys? Why would a client want to pick Co-Create?
Yeah. Oh, so clients in terms of kind of actually,
what makes you guys different, I suppose, or why would a client come to you, Co-Create Architects, over somebody else?
Yeah, and again, I think probably it's depending on which sector I'm thinking about, probably determine how I answer this question. But again, let's talking about the kind of residential market. I think what we offer and what we think we can offer really well is we make sure our clients are listened to. They're comforted from day one. I mean, again, they're asking questions that we're asked every single day, but they don't know the answer to that. And we want to make sure that they feel they're getting the answers to the questions they want, because some of them are, like I say, they're just simple questions, but if they go unanswered, then you build that kind of uncertainty. So we make sure we're there for our clients. We go and visit them individually. We offer free consultation initially to go out, see them, sit down with them, go through discussions. We'll make sure we pick up the phone if they ring. We're at the end of a phone kind of to answer any queries they have. I mean, like I say, they're employing different consultants at our recommendation, so they're really looking at us for kind of building that trust and getting that support from. So that's what we really try and focus on, is our relationships with our clients, ensuring that they feel managed throughout the entire process.
It sounds like, we had a conversation with structural engineers a couple of weeks ago. You guys know Mark Harris, and we asked similar questions, and his answers were very, very similar, wasn't it? It's a lot about communication,
the
and
relationships,
management of clients, and that kind of says to me, if you're out there looking for an architect like you guys, or it probably goes hand in hand with a lot of services, but don't just go with the cheapest or the most expensive. A lot of it is about the person and the people, because if you're able to form a good relationship or a bond with the right kind of architect or the right kind of person within that business, I mean, you're going to save a lot more money on the advice that they can give you. You're going to have a lot more of a closer relationship. Does that make sense? Is that right? Would you say?
I agree. I do agree. And it's as I said, a lot of the consultants that you may employ as part of a construction process, you're simply buying a service from them that whether that be a product, a drawing, or something. And once that's done, they're gone. Whereas an architect, yes, we do drawings, and yes, that's how we kind of portray designs and everything. But actually, if you can't communicate with them, you can't trust them. They're not reliable. Then they're the wrong people. So actually, the money, of course, I mean, financial is a part of it. But actually, if you're talking about spending 200, 300, 400, 500,000 pounds on a project, what's the difference as a percentage of that construction process to pick an architect that you kind of get to kind of get on with,
to make sure it's right.
Yeah, to make sure it's right.
And I suppose picking the right kind of architect, you can speed things up and save money there, can't you? You've got different recommendations, I'm guessing, of what can save them money with materials and other sort of bits and bobs there. And if you pick the wrong architect and you don't get on with them, I'm assuming that it's going to cost you an awful lot of money to go to another architect, pick it up from somewhere else. and start the process again.
Absolutely, and some of our clients are ones that have gone with a previous architect and come to us, and that's just the nature of it. But I think most of the time it's down to kind of a lack of communication or a breakdown in communication, and I think that's one thing that we really try and push, is to make sure that clients feel listened to, and I think it's so important.
Good. One thing that I did my research beforehand, flicking through your LinkedIn, your social medias, that sort of thing. One project that sort of piqued my interest was a project which was actually right next door to my in-laws. And it was a residential project in Sidmouth. I thought it'd be quite nice to talk about that and sort of what you actually did with it, maybe like the process, for potentially people that are listening that might want to use your services and need an architect for the future. What was that project? What did you do?
Well, so firstly, I mean, Sidmouth for us, I mean, it's brilliant for us because what we're really trying to do is get into kind of East Devon and further afield. I mean, we kind of cover this area really well. So we're really trying to kind of push and get into those parts. So, and Sidmouth for us was a really, really lovely project for us to be working on. So we delivered that. It finished end of last year, so really recently. It was a big 3-story side extension on a kind of period property in Sidwell Valley. Great project to be working on. Amazing clients, amazing contractors, and what a difference that makes when you've got everybody on the same team. Good. And again, also things like good engineer, very responsive. We had a few issues on site, but again, having someone that we're able to kind of call upon quickly and get feedback from quickly was really useful. So a couple of little hiccups like you always get with projects, mostly to do with kind of groundworks and things like that. But the project itself, and it was a lovely thing to work on. We were actively involved throughout the entire construction period, did all the detailed design prior to that. Delivered it on site end of last year. So.
Fantastic. So that was a residential project, wasn't it?
Residential project.
Pretty large house, and I think you said it was a 3-story extension.
It's a 3-story. Yeah, it was an interesting one. So it was on the ground floor. We extended the kitchen to create a new kind of breakfast room, redoing the whole kitchen as part of the work as well. Included a utility space at the back, and then on the first floor we created a kind of self-contained bedroom accessed via its own set of stairs with an ensuite.
Oh wow!
And then the third floor or second floor, the one on top of that, was an extension of the existing bedroom. So but what was really lovely about that, and it's definitely worth checking out on some pictures on our website on the socials, because
we'll put a link to that for sure.
It's got some really lovely kind of detailing, and we kind of tried to tie it into the original property. It's right in the middle of a conservation area, so heavily kind of scrutinized from a kind of planning perspective as well. So we really worked hard to make sure it looked like it had always been there. It's got this incredible deck, which is made from a product called Konker, which is a really interesting building material. It's a timber. It's a softwood timber, but they strip out all the organic matter. They fill it full of chemicals or something else, and then it creates this kind of long life natural timber. And it's got this whole deck which is built from it, so which kind of spills out from the kitchen space and the breakfast room. So it's lovely. So it's an amazing project. It was delivered to an incredibly high standard by a company called Colmex Construction, Tiverton based. A joy to work on, and and lovely clients. So
amazing. How long did that sort of thing take? Construction time. How long does it go on?
So the program was 8.5 months for that project, which is fairly typical for a residential project. So construction period. That's obviously purely the construction element. So to get yourself into a position where you're starting on site, obviously prior to that, we've got planning permission to do. We've got technical design. We've got the engineering side. So I think as a whole, it's about a 2-year process.
Quite some time then, isn't it? And you mentioned then you start right from the beginning, obviously read the stages, but you would do all their planning permission for them as well as then the technical design, and then you take it to site.
Absolutely, and we would be there to make sure that the client is getting the right consultants involved at the right stages, making sure there's value for money, making sure that they're getting competitive quotes and things like that. So we really kind of, and again, going back to kind of what we were talking about as a company and making sure the client feels listened to, we make sure we do that on behalf of the client to ensure that they're employing the right people at the right time. So
is that a large project for you, sort of on the residential side?
So value. I don't know the exact value on the project, but it's in
terms of size and
it's a big extension. Let's put it that way. For what it is, it's a big extension. We do lots of extension work. I mean, we're doing a really fantastic project at the moment in Teignmouth. really enjoying that, and that's huge budget on that, but again, that's just an extension. So but we do everything down to kind of probably down to about £50,000 worth of work. So really kind of small stuff all the way up. So
so just a single story extension, that sort of thing.
We're very happy to help.
Very happy to help.
Yeah, and
quite happy to go that small, because I know some architects wouldn't.
They shy away from. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes against what we're about. It kind of goes, if we're trying to say we're inclusive and open and everyone can get involved, and then we turn around and say, oh, sorry, it's too small.
Yeah.
I know some practices just think, well, this is our target market and that's what we do. Right. But actually, I think we can do those projects and we probably do them pretty well.
Yeah.
We like to think we do. We've got really good systems in place to deliver. And if we can deliver £1 million project, then we can deliver a £50,000 project equally as well. So I mean, you don't really get a lot for £50,000 these days, but with the way that the building industry is going. But yeah, we would definitely look at every project. And if we're not the right architect for whatever reason, we'll tell the client. We'll talk to them and we'll just talk it through. And
goes back to that communication again, doesn't it?
It does.
If you're honest about what you can and can't do, then it holds a lot of weight, doesn't it? I think it holds a lot of respect. Would you say you guys are sort of residential specialists then? Is that kind of where you're at the moment, or the type of projects that you would be able to assist on? What would you turn away?
It's a good question. So the main sectors we work on are residential, housing, so which is kind of, I guess, a subsidiary to residential. It's kind of in the same similar bracket, but kind of housing. So we're talking kind of multiple houses or one-off houses. We do healthcare work, lots of healthcare work, and that's a kind of growing sector for us. We're working across Torbay quite a lot. We're working at Derriford, Exeter as well. So there's plenty of work we're doing in the healthcare industry, and as I said, that's grown. We do private healthcare, so we're talking care homes and private GPs and things like that. So we've got a few projects like that. And then, like I say, those are the main ones. And then we do heritage as well. Again, that's a kind of an arm to what we do. The thing with heritage is it kind of falls into all sectors. So while we might define heritage as a sector, you might have a residential project that's listed, so therefore it's kind of residential, but it's also heritage. Or equally, you might be doing a healthcare project that's in a building that's protected or listed again. So heritage kind of falls across, but we're doing some really interesting projects at the moment. So converting disused water towers and things like that.
Oh, wow.
So proper grand design stuff. So and got some great projects down in Falmouth as well, and that's just really exciting residential work that we're working on. But residential specialists, I think that's what we feel we do well. We've got cool, but at the same time, we're really pushing to try to build our kind of the healthcare side of what we do as well. But
everything's on your website, isn't it? You know,
most of it is. Yeah, I mean, typically, I don't know if it's the same with everybody else, but our website seems to be about 12 months behind what we're actually doing. So when people says, "Oh, you haven't done any of that," I was like, "Well, yeah, we're doing it, but we haven't got anything we kind of want to show on the website." So I think that's why we're trying to do a bit more. Blogging and selling stories and social media, because it's a good insight into what we're doing right now. I think sorry to butt in. I think people want to see that, don't they? You know, if you're doing a lot of the residential side of things, people, you know, that has a house that wants a big extension, or even sort of house builders or bigger houses, that sort of thing. They do want to see what you've done, don't they, before they pick up the phone and actually speak to you, and they want to know what you're a specialist at and if you've got any previous experience with it. And you do have a lot on, maybe not say your website, but you do document everything pretty well on your LinkedIn and your social media. So that's the best place to go in the first instance if you're thinking about taking on an architect. Listen to the podcast, because that'll give you a great insight to what you guys do, but then actually look at the work. Agreed. I mean, our website is a bit of a kind of highlight reel. It's what we want people to see as the kind of the best of the best. And again, it's 12 months behind, because I mean, with projects, while a project might be finishing, let's say this month, actually it takes 12 months for the garden to regrow and to look lovely and become a habitable space. So actually a project everything is just exaggerated or extended in the kind of architectural world. So actually it does take a long time to kind of get stuff that's ready for the website. So the stuff we're working on now will be ready in 2 years to put on a website. That seems crazy. So that's naturally it just feels.
So who kind of like looks after that for you at Co-Create?
I think there's a recognition that we probably need to define a role a bit better for what we do. I mean, at the moment, there's lots going on and we want to showcase as much as we can, but it's no one person's responsibility to do that at this point in time. Maybe it will be in the future. But as I said, we're doing lots of networking events, lots of social stuff, lots of projects. So there's loads to talk about. And we should do more of it, much like
can it be as easy for somebody who wants to employ an architect just to pick up the phone, obviously talk to you about what you're doing and find out about your projects, but I mean, I'm guessing you can send them bits and bobs that you've done previously, pictures and that sort of stuff. It's easy as that.
And obviously everyone's different and everyone kind of approaches it in different ways, but we have clients that come to us that have done a project before and they're quite clued up and they know how the process works, and it makes conversations easier from the start. But then you have other clients that are just deciding actually we want to build an extension. They've never done it before, and it's good to talk them through from day one. But we always go out and see all of our clients, and it's not just about meeting them, but it's about seeing the property, understanding what the brief is, what's driving it, why they're doing it. Because the common thought is, let's say for example, we need another bedroom. So then most people's mind says, we need another bedroom, let's build an extension and we'll build another bedroom. And that conversation seems to happen quite a lot, where I say, well, actually, just because you need another bedroom, that doesn't mean you need to create more space to create that. Actually, is it an efficiency thing that we can come up with? Is there an inefficient layout? So actually, our job is about thinking outside the box and trying to make
another box.
Exactly.
That's good.
Okay, so we've spoken a little bit more about the projects. Let's go back a little bit and talk about the business side of Co-Create.
Okay.
So you're obviously a qualified architect. How was the transition to being a business owner? How did you find that?
Yeah, I think at A level, the other A level I did was economics. So there was always, in the back of my mind, I was always
business in you.
There was a bit of business in me. I mean, and that went back from my mum tells a story where we were moving house and I was probably 4 years old or something, and mum said, "Oh, go outside and ask if the removal men want a cup of tea." Went out, got them a cup of tea, and anyway came in jingling some money, and I basically charged them. So that was me at 4. So. And throughout my kind of teens and everything, I set up a car washing company and branded T-shirts and all that. Went around, washed everyone's car, and so there was always that kind of drive that I wanted to. I enjoyed that side of it. I enjoyed the kind of the business side of it and the branding side and everything. So that's the responsibility that I've probably taken on more so than JA or JD within the company. It's the bit I enjoy. The systems we've got in place for kind of tracking workload and things like that, they're all kind of come from my hand, and that's what I like. What I like to do. That's the bit that I really thrive. So don't get me wrong. It was a huge transition to go from that, where you're just purely designing, to the business side. Particularly we're now, a team of 11 now. So there's too many people to kind of manage all at the same time. But that's why we're broken into different teams within the companies. But it's. I think it's all about getting the systems right. As long as you can get the systems in place, that's the key to. Because it becomes a very difficult thing if you've got the wrong systems. Trying to manage 11 people with systems that are fundamentally flawed is difficult. So it's just making sure that that's all buttoned up.
What were the biggest challenges for you with that, would you say? With becoming because it's a big thing, isn't it? You go from being an architect, and I don't want to say just an architect, but that is your sort of sole responsibility. You move into becoming an architect as well as a business owner. And a director within the business. What were your biggest challenges?
Good question. I think I think as an architect, you're trained to know, as I said before, a little bit about a lot of things. And setting up as a business, depending on who you speak to, or other business owners or professionals, they're all going to give you different advice. So I think one of the biggest things is about, am I being told the right thing? Am I getting the right advice? And I think if you allowed yourself to, you would end up and said yes to kind of everything everyone was offering, there would be no business left. So you have to be able to make educated decisions, and that's little things about what accreditations does the company need, what money do we want to invest into the company for systems within the company, and what's the kind of expense for that. So it's about being able to quickly and efficiently make decisions about the company and whether things feel like they're the right investment or not. So that's probably the biggest thing for us.
Yeah. And how have you found it kind of co-directing with two other people? How is the dynamic of three directors?
So I think what's really good about us three is it means if one of them annoys you, you can moan to the other one about him. So I think that's which you can't get in a partnership. So I think we would all agree that at times that we do that a little bit, but it's good, it's healthy. Like it's because actually we all really care, and that's why it's so important, because we all care. We all end up we're passionate, so we there are not arguments, but there are heated discussions about things because we feel differently about it. So, but actually, I pick up the kind of the business side, that element. JD is very design driven about protocols for design, so he very manages our kind of company standards and things like that. JA is very much about sustainability side, to the people, listens to the people, very. So we all kind of look at the business from three completely different standpoints and push it in three completely different directions. So it works really well. So don't get me wrong, there are things that kind of cross over, and one person agrees something, but that's life, and we just have to make a decision and move forward. So we've got better at that, I think.
That's great to have your own sort of skills, isn't it? Really, because if you're all doing the same sort of thing, you're not wasting time, but like divvy it out, and then you can be specific in one sort of area, and it does take a lot to run a business, doesn't it? There's so much to think about, especially with people. They've all got their own sort of problems, so to specialize there, it does really, really help. What sort of advice would you give to somebody who wants to start their own architectural business, or even their own business, because you're a business owner? What sort of business advice would you give that you've sort of learned over the last sort of couple of years?
I think have goals. I think understand what your goals are, and I think for us, we were in an amazing position where actually where we thought we were going to end up as a kind of end goal for the company, we did in 3 years.
Really?
Wow,
so we always said it'd be lovely to have a team of 10 people working across 2 offices, doing lots of work in the healthcare and residential. We did it in 3 years, and we didn't really know where we were going from there. So over the last few months, we've really started to think about what we're trying to do.
The next goal,
what the ambitions are for the company. So I think having clear goals and write them down is very important. So
and what are the sort of goals, or what are the plans for? I don't know if you have a bit of a plan and stuff that you can talk about.
So this year is going to be pretty exciting for us. We've got we're planning on moving our main office. So a big kind of move for us. Last time we moved was 3 years ago. So that was when we moved from the small office to this office. So the plan is to grow our Plymouth office, because we're in Plymouth as well. That's going to become a slightly larger space, and then we are moving this office to Exeter. So that's happening in May.
So I don't think we've actually said, but you guys' office at the moment, you're in. Would you class it as Newton Abbot sort of area?
Yeah, Newton Abbot. We are in Newton Abbot. Yeah. So Newton Abbot in Plymouth, with a kind of a satellite office in Plymouth. So our main office has always been here in Newton Abbot.
Will that new main office be Exeter then? Is that right?
So at the moment we've got one main office, and then we've got this satellite office. The intention is that over the course of the next 2 months, we're going to move to a position where we've actually got 2 offices that are in equal size. So
brilliant.
So we would still operate as one company, but across the 2 different.
And what's the reason for doing that?
I mean, for us, so we were fortunate enough to win the Extra Property Awards last year in October, and that was obviously Exeter based. And I think for us, it's just a really good move to kind of get that EX postcode, be in Exeter, be around that group. Like I say, while Newton Abbot is accessible for lots of our clients in Teambridge, actually Exeter for us, it's got a further reach. We talked about kind of Sidmouth and East Devon.
East Devon, yeah.
It'd be good for us to kind of get into that space. So,
and where's that office going to be in Exeter? Do you know yet?
We found a place, but I'm not going to say just yet, just in case it falls through. But it'll be it's not central Exeter, it's on the outskirts, but it's Exeter. So
fab.
So
that's brilliant.
It's very exciting for us at the moment. So we've got a big move coming up. So I'm not sure how that's going to.
Nice new offices coming in the next couple of months. Any other sort of plans in terms of what I suppose you mentioned there is a goal.
Yep.
Is there a goal now? So you've hit your goal. Is there another goal? Is there a certain time period on that? What's the sort of strategy?
Yes. So I think it was always part of the ambition to end up with 2 offices in Exeter and Plymouth. So that's fundamentally why we're going through this move. Like I say, bolstered by the fact that we won this award last year, which was really good for us and a great recognition. And just to know we feel like we're now on the right path. So, so as I said, the goal is we're hopefully enlarging our space in Plymouth, getting an equally sized office in Exeter. We'll operate as one team across the 2 offices, serving a larger area. As part of that, we're going to need more people, more hands on deck, and we're actively looking for new people to join the team. So we're currently interviewing, and we're looking at 2 new people to join the team. Probably one in Exeter and one in Plymouth.
Yeah.
So that's the plan, at least for the next 12 months. And again, beyond that, I think we'd just like to just kind of grow the presence in both of those areas. And just see where everything takes us. It's again, it's difficult. We haven't really sat down and thought where we're going to be in 10 years, but I think that's really what we do need to do, because what are we trying to achieve? I mean, it's difficult when you feel like you've achieved the goal you were set out to achieve. So
thinking about another one.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, maybe, I don't know. I think as most people think, bigger, but my personal ambition is not to become huge. Like, that's not what we want. To stay humble. Myself, Jay and JD are all actively involved in projects. We actively run projects. That's part of the ethos of the company. And if we get to the point where we grow substantially, then either we're going to have to employ someone to run the company for us so we can do that, or give up what we enjoy doing. So I think there's only so big we can probably sustain and still do what we want to do. So I think we're just going to hopefully become kind of 2 well-respected companies, or one well-respected company across 2 locations. That's the goal, really. So
brilliant. And one question I did want to ask is, what is it that motivates you to, run these projects, come into work every day?
So hard.
And I think when you're younger, well, when I was younger in the profession, it was all about the end goal. It was
You're
all
still
about
young, aren't you?
Well, younger in terms of my career. It was when I was kind of coming out of uni and things like that. It was all about the final product. It was all about the finished thing, the photos and showcasing that. And don't get me wrong, that is part of it. But actually, maybe this kind of couples with kind of being the business owner side as well. But actually, nowadays, by the time a project is finishing and you've got those completed photos, and like I said, we talked about timeframes earlier, but by the time that happens, you are so embedded in another project that's currently being delivered on site that actually it's nice to see the photos come through, nice to see the finished product, but you've got to enjoy that process. I think that's what I'm trying to kind of get at, is it's not about the end goal, it's about enjoying drawing and enjoying managing and enjoying speaking to people and communicating, and that's the bit that I love. I love being able to help people and kind of put different people together and make things happen, and the process. Everything takes a long time in this profession, in the construction industry. So, which is a little frustrating for me, because I like to see results quickly. But I get my rewards from the process and seeing things delivered efficiently to a high standard. But that doesn't necessarily mean the end goal. It means the presentation of the drawings or the model or the software or whatever we're doing at that point in time. So I
suppose it's the small wins along the way, isn't it?
Wins.
Rather than
it's all about small wins.
I
suppose if you love what you do rather than just the outcome, you love the process, there's always going to be little wins within that, isn't there? Because there's so many different things you have to know as an architect. You can tick that off every day, just the drawing side, the planning permission, all those sort of processes. It's great to love what you do, and it doesn't become a chore, does it?
No, exactly. And as I said, you're constantly working towards that end goal. And actually, by the time the end goal comes, your job is done. So if you don't enjoy the process, then you've missed the point. If, like I say, it takes 2 years to get. It can take 2 years, can take longer for bigger projects to get to the outcome. So you've really, really got to love what you're doing on a daily basis and enjoy that side. So,
and talking of those wins, like, is there a big success that is kind of like pinpointed in your career that you can kind of like attribute a lot to, or
it can be big or small,
or
I mean, I wouldn't say biggest win, could be a big one, but the best thing you've done within the business.
That's a difficult question, and I think, like I say, to win an award, that was great for us, amazing, and what an achievement that really, and it really felt like we'd actually established ourselves at something. So that, I think, ultimately, if I look back, that felt like it was like the highlight of the company at the time. but actually there's some really lovely projects we've worked on, and actually I always say the best project I ever worked on was a 7 square meter footprint. It's on our website. It's called the Black Box.
Right.
It was a tiny little thing, tiny, like the size of maybe 6 or 7 post boxes. Not post boxes, telephone boxes. So like a tiny 2 Portaloos kind of job, not big. It was clad in black timber, had black window frames. It wasn't a straight angle on it. It was all sorts of things all over the place. It was this tiny thing, but it did so much. It had a walk-on glass floor. It had a roof light. It had a light tube, a tunnel. It had the charred timber. It was achieving so much, but was so small, and it was just very, very creative and neat. And that great contractor, great client, successfully delivered on site. We were actively involved all the way through, and it was a very, very rewarding project in a rewarding location, and it was designed to look like an outbuilding, like a shed in the garden. But actually, when you look at it again and realize what it is, actually it's this incredibly beautiful piece of kind of black detailed architecture with a zinc roof and everything. But it's tiny, and it's
what actually was it? What was its use?
So it was an office with an ensuite.
Oh, wow.
That was it, an office and an ensuite. Cost the best part of £60,000 at the time, which and it was an extension of an existing bedroom. It allowed access at first floor to the garden. Like I say, it allowed the light to spill through from the roof through the glass floor so we didn't lose the light in the utility space below. It was just a big problem-solving thing wrapped up in this beautiful, discreet black box. Have a look; it's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's great. Stick it.
Yeah. And then I suppose flipping that on its head, any failures that maybe spring to mind that you've learnt a lot from?
Got to be honest with this one.
Failures is difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult one. So I think of everything we've done, I'm very enthusiastic, and I'll throw all my energy at something. And I've realised in the last 3 years that I have a limit. And I didn't realise that when I first started. I thought I was kind of unstoppable, but I realised I've got a limitation to the time and effort I can put into something. And I think the failures that may have occurred would have come from kind of maybe committing to things that maybe we couldn't do. But I'm not talking about projects. I'm talking about the way the company operates behind the scenes, systems we've got, accreditations, the commitment that it takes to do some of these things to get yourself accredited. Actually, it's an enormous amount of work. And while we went into them a little bit blind, they've caught us out. And so it's probably trying to leap forward rather than kind of step forward. So it's about taking it and don't get me wrong, yes, while I could stay up to 4 a.m. and make sure that stuff gets done, it's not the right way to run a company. So it's about planning things correctly, doing things in the right manner, and not trying to run before we can walk, basically. So those are probably
I think that's
a
huge lesson, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Such good advice just for any business owner or business person. There's only so much you can do in your day, isn't there?
There is. And I think, and again, not necessarily that we've done, but I guess as an example to kind of give an example of what I'm referencing to. So if we took, for example, like social media or something like that, social media is an incredibly demanding thing. And while it might be very easy to set up an account on any of the kind of the main social media sites, that's the easy bit. Finding the content, keeping it up to date, having no posts and keeping it static it does more damage to your company, I personally feel, than not having it in the first place. So it's about, if you're going to commit to something, have the systems in place and the energy to make sure you can commit. And so that's just an example. I'm not saying that's something that we've done. We try and be as active as we can, but just in everything we do, we just always stand back and think, do we need this? Do we need to bring it to the company? What's it going to do? What's the commitment?
Yeah. Can we give it out?
Rather than just thinking, we'll pay for that. Let's see what happens. And then that's something that we've probably learned in the last 3 years.
It's a pretty good lesson.
Yeah.
Are we at the...
I think we're ready.
I think we're ready for it.
Big part of the podcast, obviously, defining different people's success, obviously. And we'll be in a place where we have a nice big catalogue of, what different people define their success as. And I think the reason why we're doing that is to offer advice to other people listening to the podcast of what their success might look like.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes people think of success as just, loads of money, doing really wealthy, that sort of thing. But it's so different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the more we can get some sort of different opinions on that, the better it will be for sort of educating people about how they might be able to define their own success. So I've babbled on a little bit there, but how do you define success? What does success look like to you?
Put simply, I think if you're waking up in the morning and you're smiling, I think you've achieved success. I think, put simply, if you're enjoying what you're doing on a daily basis, then that's whatever that means behind the scenes. As long as you're enjoying it, there's no point having loads of money and being really successful actually if you're waking up stressed and worried and you're not actually enjoying the day to day. So for me. And I think it's probably the way I've kind of looked at success and looked at kind of the company in the last 12 months has probably changed quite a lot. But actually, for me, it's all about the day to day. It's not about becoming this absolute huge company that takes over everything. I've got absolutely no interest in that. I've got absolutely no interest in earning loads of money. That's not what I'm about at all. If I can wake up, feel like I'm making a difference, do some fantastic projects for clients that are smiling and enjoy working with, that's what I enjoy the most out of everything, and that's what makes me feel successful. That's a
pretty good answer.
That's a really lovely answer, Ali.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, so we're gonna just talk a little bit now about kind of some short, sharp questions, clippable questions. Just in terms of architecture, your sector, and exploring different things around that. AI we might touch on.
Okay.
Couple of buzzwords in there.
Yeah. So the first question, what content or material should people be consuming in your industry?
Good question. And I think the content is everywhere, and exposure to information is in abundance. In every location you look, there's stuff being thrown at you, whether that be on your phone, on your computer, on advertisements. It's everywhere. And then not only that, we've got podcasts, we've got music, we've got all things like and also magazines and everything, and it's all becoming kind of more and more and more. So I guess firstly, pick one. Pick a location that you feel you can get the most out of, because you are better doing that than, I personally feel, than skimming the surface on everything. And also it depends on kind of what information you need and why you need it. Again, my inspiration 3 years ago came from looking at architectural precedents and references, so Arch Daily, the Architecture Journal, things like that, or even looking at work that was currently happening at university, student work, things like that. My precedents now come from how to keep employees happy, and it's a completely different topic basis, because while I'm still doing the architectural side, actually my focus is far more influenced by company management and that side of it. So it doesn't really matter where you get it from. Just make sure that you're getting the right content, I guess, was probably my advice.
What are you consuming at the moment then? Are you a big podcaster? Are you a magazine more so, or do you YouTube? Like you say, there's so much out there, isn't there? What are your top ones that you're sort of consuming?
So I think a good question. I think so. We do loads of CPDs in the office, and that's a really good way to. I think personally, I get more out of kind of having someone in front of me, presenting on the screen, having some lunch, and just kind of have a different environment. That, to me, that's the best way to kind of make things stick. If I start reading things online and everything, then it's useful, but I have a tolerance, and it doesn't last very long. So I like to speak to people. So kind of live CPDs is probably my main kind of source of input.
In terms of advice for, say, an architect who's going through their part 1, part 2, part 3, that sort of thing, is there any way you could point them in the direction for them to sort of really progress and really learn the most useful thing?
And again, it really comes down to where you are in that journey, that career journey. Okay. Because if you, as a part 1, it's all about creative element. It can come anything from drawing techniques to, drawing techniques is actually probably a really good example, because that's something that you learn in university and probably never really use in practice. So why on earth you do it because you're doing it. So I think it's about anything that's going to encourage that creativity, and at university that might not even be architecture. It could be I mean, it could be dance, it could be anything, anything that's going to
Barcelona,
travel, things like that. It's ways to influence you. Whereas I think as you probably move later in that process through to part 2 and then part 3, it probably becomes more about current legislation. I mean, the Building Safety Act, I mentioned it before, that's a big change. So if anyone's out there and doing their part 2 or part 3 at the moment, that's a really good thing to be kind of investing your time. But as I said, just pick a topic and invest in it and become the best. I've always said that about the industry, and I teach it to a lot of the employees that we employ, that if you don't know something, rather than it becoming this problem in the background that keeps cropping up, because it will crop up again, go and become an expert. Find out what the topic is, invest some time into it, research it, and become an expert on it. Because it doesn't take a lot for a lot of these things to become an expert. And suddenly, you've gone from taking a really bad negative thing about your kind of knowledge base into something really positive. So
there's so much material out there anyway, isn't there? It's not hard to find. No, that's for sure.
No, agreed. And as I said, like in the architectural world, you could be looking at kind of the content of a tube of silicon, and then the next thing you're looking at something completely some in-depth planning policy. So it's just so varied. So you've just got to figure out where you are in that journey. Figure out what's being demanded of you and focus on that. So
definitely. What's your best advice for someone at the start of their journey in your industry?
So throwing it all the way back, pre-uni Ali.
If you could give yourself...
I see. So really kind of still in school before they've even thought about...
Yeah, if you could go back to Ali, GCSE A level doing art.
Yeah, okay.
Thinking about doing architecture, what would be your best advice to give to
I think,
to him?
I mean, you heard what I said earlier about kind of not really understanding what architecture was until kind of... It was almost too late, because I could have quite easily picked art and done that at university and not realised architecture even existed. So I think, personally, I think it'd be great to get more exposure of the industry earlier on, whether it becomes a taught subject or not, or whether it just becomes something that's highlighted at an earlier stage. Because as I said, I didn't even know it was a thing, which is kind of silly to say, really, because how a building's designed and built, but someone was doing it, but it just never crossed my mind. But advice would be, I mean, if you know you want to be an architect at the age of 14, 15, then hats off to you.
Amazing.
But I think just do what you do. If you're an arty person, a creative person, again, I wanted art with a bit more kind of structure and rigidity, and and architecture offered me that. So I think if you're into your arts, I think it's definitely worth considering as a career.
Yeah. Brilliant. Go on, do you want to do it next one?
How do you think your industry will change in the next 10 years?
Dramatically, I think. So I think technology is a big one. I mean, that is changing. Even since I started, we use a bit of software called Revit, which is a design software, which is probably the world market leading software for design. And that was something that I was coming into play as I was joining the industry. So it's something that it's always kind of been part of what I've done. So before my time, everyone was using two-dimensional kind of CAD and things like that. I wasn't really part of that era. So I came into I learned architecture through 3D. So, but since then, I've seen an enormous change in kind of what is considered the normal in terms of kind of presentation of work. I mean, planning applications demands kind of 2D drawings, but actually behind the scenes, we've got virtual reality, we've got 3D models, but yet the drawings we produce are still 2D. And it just feels like there's this lack that, why can't we submit a 3D design of a project as a part of a planning application? Why does it have to be done as 2D drawings? That seems a complete, why are we drawing it in 3D and presenting it in 2D? So I think, the planning process is a difficult thing to shake up, but maybe that's something that could be that might change. But technology is a big one. We're trying to stay on top of the curve in terms of technology. We're trying to do lots of we do our own kind of surveying work at the moment, which we use kind of point cloud data. We convert that into a file we can use, and then it's modeled in 3D. So that allows us to walk through projects with the clients, send people virtual reality imagery and things like that. So it's really good. And again, all part of the name Co-Create. It allows clients to be part of the process. So just constantly trying to stay above. And the next thing we're trying to invest in is something that allows working from anywhere in the world.
Oh, wow.
But still being able to manage the file sizes that we do. We're not working on Word. We're working on with big files that are maybe 2 or 3 gigabytes at a time. So trying to shift that kind of data is is difficult. So trying to come up with a system that allows anyone to work from anywhere but still allow us to do that is
fairly intense.
Yeah. So that's part of the process of what we're trying to do at the moment.
So do you think technology is going to be thrown into architecture a lot more, maybe on the planning side?
I think it was more saying, I think the construction industry, the planning side, maybe there's a bit of catching up from them to do. It does feel like they're a bit static at the moment. I think that locally there's been some kind of shortages of kind of planning offices, which has caused things to slow down. I mean, we're living in a world where you can get your Amazon delivery in the afternoon, but yet it takes, I don't know, it could take 6 months to get your planning application approved. I mean, all the works. Why does it take that long? So it feels like there kind of needs to be a bit of a shake up of that system.
Will that speed things up significantly once those planning stages are?
Yeah, hopefully. And that's the biggest frustration we probably have at the moment, is just the unknown of that planning period. I mean, I know 4 or 5 years ago, you could say, right, planning's going to take this long, program that in, we're going to start on site this time. Whereas now it's like, well, we'll put the planning application in and it could be 3 months or it could be 9 months. We just can't. So it's really difficult to work around that unknown. So it does feel that the current system feels a little bit outdated. Particularly it's the same way they've been doing things since, well, I don't know, 70s, 60s. So
wow.
It feels like there needs to be a bit of a shake-up.
It moves on quite nicely. Really, really interesting point you sort of mentioned there was a little bit about your technology, which you can offer to clients with the sort of virtual reality kind of stuff. And it feeds in nicely to the next question, but I do want to talk about that. What's your best technology that you're currently using? Would it be that?
I think the design software we use, Revit. I mean, lots of people use Revit in the industry. I mean, for us as a practice, we're a relatively small practice to use a bit of software like that. So I think that keeps us ahead of the curve. So I think in that respect, for who we are, that's probably puts us one step ahead. But I think also, like I say, the scanning side and things like that, that's something that we try and do in-house. And again, the main reason we do that is just to try and control the program a bit better, because not relying on external consultants to do surveying work and things like that means that we can kind of expedite the process for our clients, keep it all in-house. So that's something we're kind of trying to invest in. What's
the benefit of that to clients? You know, that sort of bit of software. Does that allow them to sort of walk into a model or actually see a model sort of in a 3D sense on a screen? Or?
So the key benefit to the client, while there's some lovely perks that we can offer as part of that, like you can walk around your house virtually. That's fantastic. They can walk around our actual house. So but what's really useful is it allows us to work with, let's say, an engineer, for example, who, let's say, needs to do a site visit. We can send them a link and they can walk around the whole house or walk around the whole garden and get a feel for the space, and maybe that avoids the need for them to visit the site. So that it allows to speed up that process. So that's why we find that really, really useful. But for us, put simply, the reason we do it is for it firstly allows anyone in the office to do the surveying work, which is great. So it doesn't demand you going out with a tape and measure and remembering things. So you can it's done by a computer, but also accuracy. So if we miss something, if we think, oh, did that room have a fire extinguisher, we can have a look, and that's really useful for us. And then, as I said, the accuracy. So if we're not sure about a dimension or something, we can go back and check it. Like 3 years later, we can go back and have a look and see if and check. So that's why we find it really useful.
Great.
So I'm just going to move on to the buzzword AI, and I'm curious to know how you think that's going to change your industry.
Sorry, I can't. I was trying.
I didn't even see it. I don't know how you kept going.
There's a Henry Hoover just like abseiling down the building.
What the hell?
Chuck that in the bloopers. It's the AI and then another one. That's it.
All right.
Yeah, we're fine.
So we're doing the AI one again.
Take 3.
Yeah, that's a big topic at the moment. It's everyone's kind of, well, they don't know what it is. Well, they do know what it is, but they don't know how to apply it to their own business. So as soon as I kind of understood what like ChatGPT when that came out, I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I was there at 3 o'clock in the morning throwing things in, thinking, how is this doing this? How does it know this? How can it? And I was like, this is going to change everything. So I came in the next day thinking, guys, this is something massive and it's going to completely change what we do as a company. And then I kind of slowed down and realized, well, actually, and I came in and thought, wow, the power of this is amazing. And how we could use it and everything. And then the more I kind of looked at it, the more it kind of dawned on me that actually in its infancy of what feels like infancy for AI, it still needed that human input. It still needed the person to put in to say, this is what you need to do, and to tell it why it was wrong. So I kind of relaxed and thought, this isn't the end of the architectural industry. Anyway, things moved on, and then we downloaded the new version of Photoshop, which has got the beta version, which was great. So we started using this generative AI, which was really interesting. Not very good initially. I mean, it kind of it threw out something which was kind of loosely right, but the later editions have been pretty impressive actually of the power of what it can do. I did try and test it and say design an extension on this house, and it didn't quite meet the brief. But I think it could be something quite dangerous. I don't know how it does the Photoshop stuff. I don't know how it generates that. I don't know if it has a catalogue of imagery that it stitches together, or if it's purely. But I've been told it's not copyrighted. It's all
really?
It's all created by itself.
So that's what you're using
already?
No,
we don't use it for anything. No, we don't use AI for anything. We've tried it, of course. We were just interested about what it could do, but apart from kind of doing a few touch-ups here and there on things, we don't really use it in the company.
How do you think it could be used then? Is there any sort of specific area? I mean, you've mentioned it basically there. Do you think it will get to a stage where you could use it for that?
Whether it would be good enough?
Will it make...
I think given in its current form, it's pretty powerful and it can do an okay job.
Yeah.
It's not going to take long for it to be something that can actually be incredibly, incredibly powerful, that can do something amazing. Is it going to... I mean, it's like art. I mean, it can create art. So does that mean we don't need artists? No, because art is not just about the end product. It's about the process, the person, the individual. Maybe it's the same for architecture. It's not about the end product. As I said, it's all about the process. We've talked about that before. So you can't have a machine doing all the things that I don't think you can. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like we're quite there yet.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's such a unknown at the moment, isn't it?
Because,
and I've just applied to our industry, which is recruitment. LinkedIn, for example, it's added a few more different, you can AI a message to somebody now. It's not very good.
No.
In its such early iterations, it's... I don't know anyone that would use it so much, but it is going to get there, isn't it? I think it's definitely going to get to people's industries.
It will.
But it's just trying to work out where it's going to get first within your industry, and then applying it so you're the first to sort of use it.
Yeah, so the one thing that would be a really useful tool for us, so obviously we work on lots of projects across different people. We're a team of, like I said, 11 now. So actually trying to keep track of everything that's happening within the company is a difficult thing. So when we say, have we ever worked on this kind of project? On my radar, I might not have one, but actually there might be a project that JA or JD had worked on that I wasn't aware of, that we do. So what I think will be really useful for us, and something we might be looking at in the future, is to take the whole content of what we are as a company, everything we've got, put it into a closed loop. So you get open source and closed source, so a closed source loop. So it can't be influenced by external things. It would filter through every document, every bit of information we have. And then what we could do is we could ask it questions on an individual, so not for clients, but for individuals. So we could say, have we ever worked on this project? And it would tell us. It would find the information, it would file it, it would provide that information to us. So it's almost like your own in-house assistant to basically... It's effectively a filing system, and then AI would be the system to kind of give you the information you need.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
How many projects have we done in Teambridge in the last 6 years? There you go. It's done. It would dig through it.
You could set up so you've added the notes from that project, like what went well, what didn't go well, what struggles you faced, and then that could kind of tell you the things
Lessons
you need to know.
Yeah. So I think some of the more administrative tasks that could be a really useful, but I think this kind of closed source system could be brilliant.
Really interesting. Really interesting. I think we've had quite a lot of discussions about it with lots of different people, and I think we've kind of summarized with most conversations that AI isn't going to replace people. We're just going to make our jobs a lot easier. Like all technology that's come out in the last 15 years, which we think is going to be, completely groundbreaking. We're just going to use it very differently to be able to be more productive on the things that we can do.
I mean, fundamentally, if you the way I kind of see AI at the moment, which is kind of how I started to sleep again, because I think, this is going to take actually, it's kind of a search engine that just takes a pool of information And if you type something into Google and say, search for this, it will give you all the information that, and based on what you put in the search bar, will give you that information. AI is the same thing. It's a pool of information, and all it does is it pulls that information and presents it in different ways. And that's it. It can only give you what it knows. It can't know without learning. So all right, there becomes a point where it knows everything, maybe. I don't know. But it's just a way to...
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Right, we're on to the most important question of all of them. Or is it the most important question of all of them?
I feel like there might be just one more question for you, Ali.
All right, okay.
So obviously, Conquering Podcast, we would just quite like to know how you're conquering your journey differently to your competitors.
Okay.
And it can be big things, small things.
Yeah. I mean, we've probably touched on quite a few things about what we do as a company and how we do it and how we try to be different and everything and all the things. But I think what we do is, and I think this is across the board, is every project we deliver to the highest possible standard that we possibly can. And fees come a part of that, of course they are, and user experience and everything. But actually, the fundamental goal is no project gets left. If it demands 10 times more input than we originally thought it may have, it doesn't matter. We are going to keep doing that project until we've delivered it to the highest standard that we feel we can. And we will continue to do that. And naturally, hopefully, that then results in better projects, better clients, better business, and we move forward. So I think that's always the focus. It's never about kind of turnover and profit or anything like that. It's all about making sure we're delivering projects to the highest possible standard. So,
quality.
Yeah, quality.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great, okay.
Now
we can move on to the most important question.
Important.
Okay, fine, good. What's the best coffee you've ever had?
The best coffee. Okay.
Any shout outs?
Yeah, I think there is actually. A little plug. Okay, so I'm a big coffee fan. I'm actually off coffee for the moment, but we'll see how long that lasts. But actually, a really lovely coffee to try is actually one that my sister and brother-in-law, they've recently set up a roasting company, or roasters.
Cool.
Oh wow, this is an important question then.
It's very important. So they probably set it up 6 months ago, something like that. It's called The Coffee Train, on the screen now.
Fab. Yeah, link to.
The Coffee Train. So they're based in Kings Kerswell near Newton Abbot. They roast their own coffee. They ship it in from different areas and different. I don't think it's blended. I think it's all single origin. Well worth trying.
Really?
Yeah, really lovely coffee. Buy it by the bean, buy it ground. But yeah, try it out. It is a lovely coffee. I mean, you can have it in the cafetiere and whatnot. But yeah.
And what's this called? The coffee.
It's called The Coffee Train.
And based Kings Kerswell.
Newton Abbot. If you go on Instagram, The Coffee Train.
And have they got a website?
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure they do. Or be able to find it on social media and buy it offline, that sort of thing. But worth a try.
Train, so.
Fantastic. Okay, bro. Well,
super.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Ali,
Thank you to both of you
for hosting us
conquering.
today.
That's been really enjoyable.
We've had an excellent conversation. Anybody that wants to find out more about architecture, there's so much within that conversation, isn't there, really? So really appreciate your time.
You're
Thanks
very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ali.
Thanks again. Bye.
Is that a regular occurrence here?
What's going on there? Yeah, no worries.
Oh my God, I'm not gonna.
Oh, they're cleaning the car. Is that what she's doing?